What is up? BioGlitch here. Today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our HTML basics and we're going to talk about forms. Forms is just another element that you can use in HTML. This can be used to take any type of user data. So if you're taking some type of credit card information, email submission, maybe having someone subscribe to your email, you use a form for these things. But the most important part about a form, in my opinion, is making sure that you're ensuring safe coding practices or some type of secure coding practice when you're utilizing your forms. So I'm going to teach you how to build a form, but then we're also going to make sure that we're utilizing some type of secure coding practice as we do this. I'm going to explain it as we go. Our form is going to consist of 4 or 5 things. There's going to be a username, an email, a password, a comment, and then a submission button. So let's get started. Let's create a section here, and we're going to give it the ID of elements, and of course, inside of there we're going to have our h2 and then our paragraph. So let's give this h2 a title of elements, and then in our paragraph we're just going to write obviously a quick note of what an element is. We're going to say elements are the building blocks of a web page. I'm going to do a quick save. Then I'm going to say they consist of a start tag, the content, and then the end tag. And then I'm just going to add some type of small note after that. Just say these contain text, elements, or both. All right. So obviously inside of our element section, I said we're going to talk about forms first. So let's create a section. We're going to give it the ID of form, and then we're going to do our h2, and we're just going to do secure coding practices, or practice and forms. We'll say practice and forms. The reason why I didn't have you add a paragraph or anything is because we're just going to dive right into creating the form itself. So let's start with the element for initializing or utilizing our form. That's going to be the word form, and then if you see here we have get and post. Get and post, you can get a little more detail off of it by just doing a little bit of research, but in the shorthand, get is the non-secure way of utilizing a form. Post is the secure way of utilizing a form. Post pretty much just erases the data after you input it into the form. Get kind of just lets it linger inside of your web browser, or a web page, I should say. So I'm going to do a quick save, go to our document here, and if you see, we don't have a form or anything showing up yet. We just have our 2 sections that we created, and then the h2 title there. We're going to go to a website called formsubmit.io or .co. I'm sorry, formsubmit.co. And as soon as you log in, you're going to see something here as an example form, a contact form. It's going to say action, and you see this action with this URL here. Just go ahead and copy that and just paste it right here where you see the action in your form. And pretty much what Form Submit is it's a service, a emailing service that you can utilize that's free for you to submit and use forms, or have people submit forms and use forms on your web page without you having to pay for them. There's many others like this. I'm just using this for an example for you to practice with. You don't have to utilize this in your end projects or anything, but this just kind of gets you a easy understanding of how to use this, what I would like to consider an API technically, to submit email forms. So I'm going to close out of that, and if you see where it says youremail.com, just put your email right there, and just take a note of this, what I'm going to say. Once you put your email right here and we click submit later on in this document, you'll see that you got to follow a couple steps to submit that email and get that actually activated. And then it's going to ask you to put in a token right there, and you just input that token and submit that email again, and you should see your form working. So we'll cover that a little more later, but for now, just kind of keep that in your mind as you're going, so you're not freaking out wondering what's going on with your email. So let's start off with our username section here. We're going to use an input example for, or not an input, we're going to use a text, inputting text example and we're going to kind of use a type of secure coding practice to make sure that we simmer down our input text to only allowing certain characters in the name, right? So let's do a label, and we use labels to obviously label things inside of our form, and we're going to say for username, and we're going to dive into that in just a couple seconds. And inside of our label, let's add some content, and we'll put username in there. And then we're going to do a input because we're taking input from the user, and we're going to do text. Now, if you see here it says name, that's what your for in your label, that attribute for, that's what it's going to connect to right there, right? So we're going to say username. So we're going to say for username, and it's taking the name here, username. So for the name, username, and it's going to look for that in your form, and that's pretty much what it tells your document there. It's saying when it pops up inside of your email, you'll see the word username, and then you'll see whatever the input text is for it right there. For the ID, we're going to use username as well, and then we're going to do something to only allow certain characters to be inputted inside of this this input element here. Sorry about that. And we're going to use pattern. So when we use our pattern, this is pretty much saying, hey, only allow these string of characters to be placed inside of this input element. And we're going to use these two square brackets here, and we're going to do lowercase a to lowercase z, or hyphen lowercase z. Then we're going to do capital A hyphen capital Z, and then we're going to do 0 hyphen 9. Then outside of that, we're going to add the plus sign, and then we're going to change title to, or we're going to add a title, I'm sorry, we're going to add a title. So this is going to be something that pops up when we input an inappropriate or something that doesn't follow what we set here in our pattern, right? So this is going to say only alpha numeric characters are allowed. I'm going to do a quick save and just show you what we're looking at here. So I can do BioGlitch, and it works just fine. But if I try to do BioGlitch with a hyphen, you get this right here that tells you to please to please match the requested format. So as you see, that form submit popped up because I pushed enter and tried to do something else. But if you see, that note that we put inside of that title is what popped up there. So let's go ahead and add one more thing, and we're going to do a note or some type of like little small note, and it's called small inside of the elements for HTML, and we're just going to retype only alpha numeric characters are allowed, and that's going to be right next to our input and label elements right there, and we'll style this a little differently in just a few. So above our label, let's make a quick note, and we're just going to say input validation example ensuring the username is alpha numeric only. Then I'm going to go right under there. I'm going to add another comment. And what we just did, and what we're going to continue to do, is sanitize our code. So what does sanitize our code mean? Well, think of it as if you're actually cleaning up your code, right? So we want to make sure that if we're using username input or a text input, that we're using it for what it's supposed to be for. So that's going to be taking names, maybe a business name, maybe a personal name, or maybe your username, things of that nature. Or if we're using the email, make sure we're only using the input email input. Same thing for password, so on and so forth. We're going to make sure that we continue to sanitize our code no matter what we do, and you've already pretty much done that by using your H2 elements where you're supposed to use them, using your paragraphs where you're supposed to use them. So you're used to that. It's just a new terminology. So let's go ahead and we're going to say input sanitization example for emails. Then I'm going to go here, I'm going to do a label, and of course, you guessed it, email, and then email colon. And then we're going to do input, and we have all these different inputs here. Of course, we're going to go for input email, And then for the name, we're going to do email because our label for email is what we're going after. And then we're going to do email for the ID. And then we're going to do another small, and we're just going to tell the user to enter a valid email address. And then we're going to set this to required. So if you notice, looks like I didn't set it here. We're going to also set our username to required. This is going to make sure that no matter what, you are not able to submit a form without entering the required information or required input there. Next, we're going to talk about passwords. So when you're setting up your forms for passwords, let's say you have a login form, you can set your passwords to be a certain length or take a certain amount of characters. The same way we did with our username, we can set a pattern for our passwords, and we can have them to where they have to be at least like 5 characters or 10 characters or whatever you would like on your web page. So let's go ahead and add another comment, and we're going to say password handling, and we're going to say setting the length and complexity. And this is going to allow you as the developer to set parameters that is going to safely be able to regulate what is able to be entered in your forms on your web page, and it's going to prevent cross-site scripting attacks or some type of SQL injections. There's so many other things that it's going to protect you from. So what we're going to do, of course, you guessed it, is set a label, and that label is going to be for password. And then, of course, set our content to password. Then we're going to set an input. And remember, we have all these things here. Well, good thing we have an input for password, so we can set a password input for our name and ID, and the type is already set for us. And then what we're going to do is set a pattern for our password. So we can make this as complex as we want, or we can make it as uncomplex as we want. So let's go ahead and set a couple parameters here, and we're going to do parentheses, and we're going to do a question mark, equal sign, period, and then we're going to do a star slash D, or backslash D, sorry, not forward slash. And then we're going to do another question mark, equal sign, period, star, and then we're going to do our square brackets here. We're going to do the letter A through Z, same thing that we did above, but we're really just going to copy this, paste it, and then just do a capital A and capital Z. And then we're going to do a period, and then do our curly brackets, and we're going to set the length to 8 with no end there. So it has to be a minimum of 8 characters, or we can do a maximum of 20 characters, right? So this is our min and max here, and then this is just setting our parameters right here. So let's go ahead and take that. And so this, let's talk about what we just did here before I move on. So this parameter here pretty much says you need to have at least one number, right? At least one lowercase letter, and at least one capitalized letter. So that's how you set your parameters for that there. And then this is saying it has to be between 8 and 20 characters. And then, of course, we're going to set it to required. And then right behind required, we're going to set a title. And then we're going to let our user know, hey, this must contain at least one number, one uppercase, and one lowercase letter. And at least, if I can spell, at least 8 to 20 characters. And then we'll save it. And what I want to do is copy and paste this. because what we're going to do is add a small element. We're going to do a save, and then if you see here, we have our password input. So we're not going to test that out just yet. You can if you want. I'm not going to test it out just yet because we're going to get to that in just a second once we add our button and we do some styling to this. So the last part that we're going to do is set up the section for comments or taking some type of text that we're going to use as a message to us from our end user, and then we're going to add our button. So let's do another comment, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to learn how to use or learn what the HTTPS is finally going to do for our submission, right? So this is going to be part of our data handling section here, and that's going to be sending the data or collecting the data some type of way. So we're going to just do secure data handling, and we're saying we're just going to put a colon and put submission. So I'm going to save that, and what I'm going to do here is add a label, of course, and we're just going to say comments, and then we'll put comments for our content, and then we'll do input, and for our input, we're not going to do input. I'm sorry. We're going to do text area, and if you see here, you can set the columns and rows. Just leave as is, and just do a regular text area. And of course, for the name, we're going to do comments, and then for the ID, we're going to do comments, and then we're going to set it to required. Because this is our text area, if you take a look here, you are able to change the height of this, like drag it however you please. We're not going to put any text inside of here because this is for the user to input text. And then what we're going to do is just leave a note here. Say, hey, avoid entering sensitive information here. We're just going to do a save, and then we're going to add a button, and then you see we have button disabled, button R for reset, submit, so on and so forth. We're just going to do submit, and then put the content at submit. So if you take a look here, then you see we have a form, and since we didn't fill out that field, you see it's going to say the same thing for email, and then if we do password, we're going to have to set. But then if we don't type enough, then you'll see it's not going to do it. And then if we don't use the parameters that we set, then it's not going to allow us to continue. So now that we know that our form is set up, come back for video number 2, and then we'll go ahead and style this.